In January 1953, a Canadian Forces B-25 Mitchell bomber flew over Pitt Lake in the Rockies. Captain Jack McIntosh, a World War II veteran, and his co-pilot were heading to Sea Island Airport, just outside of Vancouver. But when the plane hit a stormy patch, it became difficult to control. McIntosh could tell that the freezing rain was affecting the movement of the wing flaps, causing the plane to lose altitude. The storm had reduced visibility to the point where they could no longer fly using visual flight rules. Everything that the crew tried to regain altitude was in vain. The B-25 was headed directly for Mount Spindle and crashed into the peak at 300 kilometers an hour, killing all of the crew aboard. The Nazis were infamous for pillaging during the Second World War. As a result, many of Europe's priceless treasures ended up in strongholds located throughout Germany. Nothing was spared, from paintings by the great masters to precious artifacts, including the famous spear used by the Roman centurion Longinus to pierce the side of Jesus Christ. Objects made of gold were melted down and transformed into bullion. When the war ended, art experts took on the task of tracking down the treasures stolen by the Nazis so that they could be returned to their rightful owners. According to legend, Canadian soldiers were rewarded for their efforts by discovering crates filled with gold bullion.
The gold was recovered from the basement of an old church in Germany by the Canadian military at the end of World War II. The Nazis had to send various caches of gold everywhere to keep it out of Allied hands. And the particular cache that ended up in the B-25 bomber was recovered from the basement of an old Roman Catholic church.
Hundreds of bricks were cast and marked with the Nazi eagle. The Third Reich weren't the only ones who were greedy. Rather than tell their superiors about their newfound wealth, the men decided to smuggle the gold out of the country. They did this so skillfully that their loot was literally forgotten. It wasn't until several years after the war ended, in January 1953 to be precise, that the mysterious crates suddenly reappeared on the Canadian Forces military base in Saskatchewan. The crates were loaded onto a B-25 headed for Sea Island, British Columbia.
The unofficial story is that the B-25 bomber, when it was in Saskatoon, was in fact loaded with gold bullion that the Canadian Army had recovered after World War II in Germany. And I actually talked to an ex-military source of mine who said that his uncle saw the cargo being loaded onto the plane in big crates and labeled before its trip to Sea Island Airport in BC.
The crew was led by Captain Jack McIntosh, a war veteran who had engaged in air combat over Germany. Other than the gold, the aircraft was also carrying some $800,000 in cash.
All right. Officially, it was a training mission, a routine training mission. That's what I was able to locate several documents which stated that that's what they were in fact doing. I was able to locate a cargo manifest as well, which was completely empty, and newspaper accounts which also backed up the story that it was actually a routine training flight.
The plane took off late that morning. The weather forecast called for squalls and storms over the coastal mountains, but they weren't expected until early evening. And according to the flight plan, the B-25 would be at its destination by then.
The plane was flying in from a northeastern direction, and it was caught in a storm. And the storm was really particularly nasty and had lots of ice rain, which froze the flaps and the plane was unable to control its elevation.
Captain McIntosh tried to fly between the snowy mountain caps, but the weather was freezing the cables that controlled the wing flaps. A catastrophe was inevitable. Before the crew even had time to issue a distress call, the B-25 crashed near Spindle Canyon. Several months passed before search teams scanned the area and finally found the wreckage.
On September 14th, 1953, the search party was sent up to the general area where where they thought the plane had gone down, and the military located the plane and the cargo, and they removed all the bodies from the wreck, as well as whatever cargo was there, be it valuable or not. The rumors regarding the gold started right around the same time as the plane went down, because there was a newspaper article printed at the time which stated that it was carrying a gold cargo as well as a payroll for the military.
More than 50 years have passed since the B-25 crashed, yet the impact site has remained virtually unchanged. Only a handful of prospectors from the area have succeeded in getting anywhere near the wreckage of the B-25, and there's been no evidence that they found either gold or money.
The only person that I've heard of who has found gold around the plane was the military. The source that I have, his uncle, was involved in the recovery of the cargo of the plane, and he claims that his uncle helped recover gold that had been scattered all over the mountaintop when the plane went down and impacted and exploded all over the place, and the gold was scattered all over. And they took what they found and they put it in an old mine shaft, which is just supposed to be located northeast of Spindle Canyon, to wait for when they could haul it all off the mountaintop. And since he was up there, other people, I don't know of any people that have gone up there to try and find it, but it's said that it is very possible to this day that there might still be gold up there, because when the plane went down, it hit the top of Spindle Canyon and the fuselage ripped open and the gold was scattered all over the place. And according to my source, there is still gold there because they did not recover it all.
The Nazi gold on board the B-25 may never be found, but the mere idea that it may still exist continues to feed the fantasies of adventure lovers.